Alright guys, hello again. This is going to be another Mercury Monterey restoration vlog, I guess you could call it. It's not really a vlog since you can't see my face, but it is a little update, I guess. Anyway, so if you remember from a video, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months ago, maybe even older than that, I got this amazing 8-track player serviced, rebuilt, refurbished, whatever you want to call it. They didn't restore the exterior of it, which is too bad because I think it would have cleaned up pretty nice. The dial works and everything, and it's clear, you can see it. It's just got this sort of dust deposit here and this little scratch right here. But it is what it is. It's about the same condition the car is in, so, you know, beggars can't be choosers, right? But anyway, I got this radio so I could play 8 tracks in the car, and then it ended up not working because the original radio, this guy, is actually much shorter, and the tang that it uses to mount to the actual body of the interior of the car doesn't exist on this one. It's that thing instead, and the place that this hooks up doesn't exist on this car because it didn't come with that option. So not only do we have a radio that is twice the depth as the stock one, but we have no way of actually hooking it to the body of the dash. Furthermore, the face of the radio that hooks it, that sort of centers it to the dash, doesn't fit on this one. It fits on this one just fine. If I could actually bend this up so I could show you. Sits on there like that, and you bolt these, or put a nut on both of these, and it sits in there like that and centers it. Bottoms out to the bottom of those. Well, on this one, on this one here, pull this out all ways so you can see it. This one here, it goes on and bottoms out on that, but on this side there's a big gap right where the threads start too, and that's no bueno. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to cut this here sleeve down so that, and then put this nut here back on top of the sleeve so that this here thing bottoms out on both of them at the same time without putting a spacer on this one to make it longer, because I need that knob. Also, this plate here needs to be back further anyway, because if you look, the selector buttons are flush with this metal piece, and that's not going to work because the dash bezel goes over this metal piece. So if I were to do this, the dash would actually be, or the radio would actually be recessed into the dash, and we can't have that. So I'm going to have to do some fabrications with this here radio. This is an extra plate that I got in a junkyard. This is actually a radio I got out of a junkyard. It's from a Ford LTD, 75 Ford LTD, and this is a 74 Merc Monterey, but it's close enough to the same thing. It's got the same plate, so I don't have to wreck my factory one. I can keep the factory one and use this junkyard plate to do it if I have to make any modifications to this. But honestly, I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to have to cut that sleeve. I'm not going to actually modify the plate here. It's going to be the sleeve that gets cut so that it'll fit. I think what I was thinking I might have to do is saw out these holes a little bit so they're a little bigger. If I, for whatever reason, can't cut that sleeve, I'll have to saw these holes down so that it fits over the nut instead of around it. And then I'll just have to put a bigger washer or something on the back of it so that it stays. But that's what I have to do with the plates. Then I have to figure out how I'm going to deal with this. I might have to cut it off. It might just be able to stay there. But I'm going to have to figure out some kind of a way that I can get the bottom of this radio here to mount to the actual inside of the dash. So that's going to be number 2 on the list for that. And then number 3 is the actual connectors here, which I've already started, as you can see. So the connectors, this guy who did this, he put a new amplifier into it, so the signal gets further signal and it gets clearer signal. So it's actually a digitally and electronically tuned receiver, so like what you get in newer cars, the digitally tuned receivers, but it's analog display. So I can get clear AM signal without all the static and fuzziness and all that crap. It's gonna tune it to the exact signal of where the dial is actually on here, whereas in a regular analog one, it's kind of open to interpretation, so to speak. It just kind of does what it wants. So this is actually going to get better reception, and the sound quality is going to be better. But consequently to that, he's got this thick-ass power wire coming out of here. So he had to splice that in, as well as all these speaker wires were also new and spliced in, and then he put the original connector back on it. Now, if you'll notice something, this original connector is a 3-prong connector, okay? The connector that came off the car is a 2-prong connector, and this will not work in the 2-prong connector because it's not separate. It's not a separate deal. It's a whole thing, so it won't hook up to it. So what I had to do is this here connector came off of this junkyard radio. This came on here obviously like this. Cut that off, put the junkyard one on so it will work for my car. And the reason that it's hooked up like this right now is because I just had it in the car to test that this here yellow wire is actually the same as the black wire on the original harness. Because the reason that you have these 2 wires here instead of just one is because Ford cars, and I think probably most cars from the 70s and earlier, have mono sound system. It's not stereo, it's mono. You have 1 sound channel. This car has 3 speakers, but 1 sound channel. So, you know, music back in the 50s and 60s didn't have stereo, so it didn't matter. But basically stereo, for those of you who don't know, is that you have, like, let me just water it down, dumb it down for you. You've got your drums coming out of the front speaker. You got your guitar coming out of the left rear, and you got your singing coming out of the right rear. That's stereo. Mono is the same sound, comes from all 4 speakers, or all 3 speakers, sorry. So you'd have guitar, singing, and drums on left rear, right rear, and the front center one. And that's what this car had. But 8 tracks were stereo. It was a stereo 8-track. So you needed to have, in order for an 8-track player to really work, you needed to have stereo, because cassette tapes, 8-track tapes, reel-to-reel tapes, they're all stereo, they're not mono. So basically what these 2 wires are is a left sound channel and a right sound channel. And since this car only has a left sound channel, we're not going to be using this here orange wire. So I just had to hook that up to guess to make sure, because either if I hooked it up to the right channel, there'd be no sound at all, no matter what. If I hooked it up to the left channel, there'd be sound. So that's why I did that. But I just hooked it up. I just tested it. Tests good. It's hooked up right. So I'm just going to stick some butt connectors on here, melt them down, get them all good. And then I don't know why this light wire is so long, but I might zip tie that together or something to shorten it up a bit. But after I do that, I'm going to cut this here, either cut this off or stick it in first. Or how about this? I'll stick it in first and decide whether I'm going to need to cut it off or not. I'm hoping I don't have to, because it's going to be kind of a pain in the ass. But if I do, it's not the end of the world. And then I will deal with the adapter plate and dealing with that. But once it is in, I will put a video up online, or here on YouTube, of it in there. I'll showcase it. I'll explain what I needed to do, just in case anybody else wants to do the same thing, which I highly doubt, because who would go through this much trouble to put inferior sounding technology in their car when you could just put a Bluetooth radio, right? But I don't like Bluetooth, and I like period correct things, so let's get an 8-track player. But anyway, I'll post that up on YouTube after I'm done, and I might put 8-track in there and play it for you, so those of you who have never seen one, or have never heard one play, or haven't heard one play in like 50 years, you can see one playing again. But I gotta be careful with that, because YouTube has copyright striked my channel a few times for having music on it that I didn't license or whatever. So anyway, that is what's going on with the Mercury. I'll show you the inside here. So there's the original radio. See, there's that regular, just mono connector. You've got your ground and your left sound channel, and then you've got power, this black wire, and then the light for the backlight on the radio. Original radio. Here's the original faceplate for it, and this is the hole that it needs to go into. So as you can see, that slot right there, that's where this bracket would slide into and sort of hold the radio in place. On a up-level car with a stereo radio or an 8-track player, I suppose, you'd have a sliding bracket that went all the way to the back with a nut on it, and then you'd slide a bolt into that and bolt it down. That's the way my Oldsmobile is. But this car, I thought maybe it would have it, but it just wouldn't be in use because they all made them the same. But this car is still old enough that they made in each individual car, you know, for the features that it has. Nothing more, nothing less. So you aren't going to find a bunch of connectors under the hood for features it didn't have because they made each car to, you know, have the features that it does. So this car does not have that bracket back there. And it might end up hitting that HVAC box if I leave it on, so it might need to get cut off. But that's what it looks like. I am going to get a new clock delete plate eventually. I found one on eBay for 25 bucks, so I can get one without this hole. I think what that hole is somebody tried to drill a hole to mount up a compass, because this car did have a compass in it, aftermarket, in the glove box when I got it. But I don't like that hole being there. It doesn't serve a purpose, and it's kind of tacky looking, so I'm probably going to end up getting a new delete plate for that, maybe putting the Mercury emblem on it or something, snazz it up a bit. But anyway, that's what's going on with this. I think this is vlog number 7 or 8, so I'll label it appropriately, and I'll see you when I get this in. Thanks for watching.